Alright, folks, welcome to Astronomy Live. Tonight, or rather this morning, we are tracking Artemis 2 with the 11-inch Celestron NexStar GPS telescope and the S-Big ST2000 XCM camera. Now, the telescope is not polar aligned, this is just out as aligned, so we're subject to field rotation here and less than optimal tracking accuracy, but I'm running 20-second exposures, and you can see the Artemis 2 spacecraft integrity streaking through the view relative to the stars here. So let me put a caret up on the stream here so I can point at it. There we go. Right here. So yeah, welcome, and I'll be streaming this until we hit morning twilight, which is in about an hour. And you can see the Orion spacecraft is moving quite quickly through the field of view here. Again, these are just 20-second exposures, and you can see how much it's moved from one frame to the next. By collecting these pictures over time, I can independently solve for the orbit and verify that this is indeed Artemis 2. If you haven't already checked it out, please go check out my launch footage of Artemis 2 from earlier yesterday. It was honestly some of the best launch footage I think I've ever captured with this same telescope, but with a different camera, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema on the main telescope and a Canon 90D on the wide field refractor. So for this morning, I'm going to be manually pushing the telescope around with slew controls to keep it in frame as it starts to exit the frame. And once we get enough data, we can solve for the orbit and continue following the spacecraft. But hopefully they will be making an apogee rays burn as they go to the moon with the translunar injection burn. So they'll enter cislunar space and head out for a free return trajectory around the moon, which will of course drastically change the orbit. Is it 20,000 miles per hour right now? I don't know the current velocity. I'm guessing it's probably a lot less than that at the moment. They're in an elliptical orbit and they're high up, so they're probably going to be going a little slow at the moment until they fall back down to perigee. How do I know it's Artemis? The TLEs are not complete yet. Well, that's a great question. So right now, this is where Artemis was predicted to be based on the pre-launch trajectory. It was roughly in that region, and when I went to that region again a few minutes later after it left the field of view, I saw the same streak moving the same speed. So I'm thinking this is probably Artemis, and I can do another slew to it after it leaves the frame here, and we can verify that it shows up again. But again, the final confirmation will actually just come from my own determination of the orbit using astrometry. So astrometry is the measurements of the coordinates of the spacecraft using the stars in the image. By measuring those coordinates over multiple points in time, multiple images spanning, say, an hour of time, I can actually determine the orbit independently of NASA and independently of anything else, and compare that with the expected trajectory, the expected orbit of Artemis 2. And because they launched basically due east from Florida, they take on the inclination of the launch site. So it was about 28.5 degrees inclination last night, shortly after launch. Now I know they've done some burns since then, which may change the inclination a bit, but that was the case early on at least. So that's one of the factors we can look at. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. Well, Starlink satellites move much faster than this. Starlinks would streak through this field of view in a split second. They would be in and out um, in one of these 20-second exposures. So I don't think it's Starlink, but I did see what I suspect is a Starlink actually while aligning the scope. I saw it streaking through the field of view of the eyepiece that I was using to align, and it moves pretty quick. So yeah, the field of view here is pretty narrow. I'm not quite sure what it is actually. I haven't measured it with this camera, with this configuration, in quite a while, maybe ever on this telescope. But I'll know once I do the astrometry. But I suspect it's less than half a degree wide. So you're looking here at a view that's magnified such that you couldn't fit the full moon in the frame. And we have basically a full moon out there right now. I could try to stick the moon in the frame, but that would be much too bright at this exposure level. How long until it's out of the field of view? Probably just a few more exposures. It's getting up there to that top left corner, so it's booking along pretty good now. 10,000 plus now, says Christopher. Yeah, that makes sense. Think I saw Starlink deorbit them about a month ago. They have about one a day coming down now. That's cool. Yeah. I think there was a sighting of a Starlink deorbiting over Cape Canaveral during some of the preparations for Artemis. I think a lot of media were out there, and some of the launch photographers caught some photos of a Starlink deorbiting in the middle of the day, I believe. That was pretty cool. Oh, check this out. We've got another streak entering the view. I have a sneaking suspicion that the one behind is the ICPS. So Orion has separated from the interim cryogenic propulsion stage and has left it behind. And I think that's what this guy is down here, now entering the frame. One of these is definitely Orion, and one of them is definitely ICPS. But based on the positioning, I think the top left one is Orion, and the bottom right one down here is ICPS, the upper stage of the SLS rocket that Orion has now departed from. So shortly after launch, they did some proximity operations where Victor Glover took over manual control of the spacecraft and evaluated its handling characteristics by maneuvering it very, very close to the upper stage and verifying that basically Orion is capable of performing docking operations in the future. But after they were done with that, they backed off from the stage and did a separation burn to leave it behind. Now, hours later, you can see how much separation there is. It's almost spanning the entire field of view of this telescope. But we do have two moving objects here. So I think what I'll do is I'll actually let Orion leave the field of view, and we'll get some data for what this second streak is in case I'm wrong, in case this one's Orion. But we'll get data for both, and we can solve for both orbits, so that'll be fun. Tyson Dog Original asks, can you, and if you can, are you going to track it during the elliptical orbit stage? So it is in the elliptical orbit. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, but it is in an elliptical orbit right now, traveling out to basically geostationary distance uh, before they do the translunar injection burn. And so 24 hours after launch, they will do the translunar injection burn and send it all the way out to the moon, but that hasn't happened yet. So they are in that sort of elliptical parking orbit right now. And that's what we're doing. We're tracking it as it is quite far from Earth, but not on the translunar trajectory. Christopher Levesque asks, will that come down? I believe it will. I believe the perigee of the ICPS is low enough that it'll burn up when it comes back to perigee. Unfortunately asks, ICPS is in a closer orbit than Orion, right? The orbit isn't elliptical. So it is in elliptical orbit. It's not going to be in as elliptical an orbit as Orion is once they do the TLI burn, but it is in what I would say is an elliptical orbit. Um, again, not going out nearly as far as the moon, but going out basically, you can think of it kind of like a geostationary transfer orbit and that kind of elliptical orbit. But it will, I think, be left to burn up in the atmosphere because I think the perigee is like 10 kilometers or something. So I think it is going to hit the atmosphere on the way back. ICPS did do a disposal burn about 5.5 hours after launch. So yeah, I think it is going to come back and burn up, but I don't think the disposal burn, I could be wrong, but I don't think the disposal burn takes it completely out of that elliptical orbit. It just brings the perigee to the point where it's going to hit the atmosphere and burn up. Christopher Levesque asks, what are the chances I could video the translunar injection with a 14-inch Meade? If you were in the right place on Earth, I think that would be very likely. I want to say that with a nominal on-time launch, it would have been doing the TLI somewhere over the Atlantic between South America and Africa. If you were in Africa, I think it's possible you could see it. I think it was closer to Africa than South America, to be clear. But they didn't launch quite on time. They were a little bit delayed in the launch, and I don't know what that's done to the burn timings exactly for TLI, or where exactly it'll be over the surface of the Earth at this point now when they do the TLI burn. So that's a question. So again, I believe what we're looking at now is probably the ICPS trailing behind Orion, and we'll verify that after the fact. But I'm recording all these pictures right now so that we can analyze them after the fact. I should probably also make sure my date time is synced. Good. Yeah, it's synced. Good. Okay. Yeah, you can see that some of these pictures come out with the stars a bit streaky, because we're in alt-az tracking here, which isn't super accurate, but it's good enough for these short, relatively short exposures, 20 seconds. 20 seconds each. Dats May says, this is an even better way to determine the shape of the Earth in a celestial theodolite. Nice. Huh. Oh, wow. Check that out. There's two objects there. What in the world? And one suddenly got way brighter. I noticed what looked like a faint streak in the previous image that is now suddenly a bright streak, and probably only momentarily. It probably dims again. It's probably something tumbling. Something that may have come off the ICPS. Look at that. It just got really faint. It's still there, but it's faintly behind the brighter streak. Oh boy, what would that be? Something to do with Orion stage separate, or Orion separation from the ICPS, maybe? Something that came off? Don't know. I know ICPS let off some CubeSats, but I wouldn't expect that I could see tiny little CubeSats. Maybe if they catch the sun just right and glint, maybe. But I wasn't expecting that, just because they're so small. But yeah, there was something trailing this bright solid streak here, and it was only momentarily bright enough to show up. Really interesting. Yeah, Christopher Levesque says CubeSats. It could be. Oh, he says, I think one of the CubeSats has got a big solar panel on it. Okay. Well, that would explain it if the solar panel caught the sun just right to catch a sun glint. That's really cool. Ha! That would also strengthen my initial speculation that this is the ICPS and that the first streak we saw going through was Orion, because the CubeSats deployed from ICPS after Orion separation. And of course, when all this is done, not only will I analyze these images, but I'll also put them together into a time lapse and upload that as a separate video on the channel. And the other good news is, because we got a launch on April 1st, we'll continue to have viewing opportunities in the early morning hours from Florida, some better than others. Today it's peaking around 30 degrees elevation above the horizon. Some days it's down as low as about 20, but all doable throughout most of the mission. So there will be additional live streams and chances to track the spacecraft after TLI as well. Aim Kai says, brilliant. I'm too far north and on the opposite side of the planet to boot to see anything. Otherwise, I'd be trying to get a glimpse of the Orion spacecraft myself. I appreciate it. Tyson Dog Original says April the 2nd here in Australia. Yeah, it's now April 2nd here in Florida as well. But in Australia, you should have great viewing opportunities. Now, these objects are too dim to see by eye, of course, and even with binoculars, I think it would prove quite a challenge. Maybe tonight it might. I mean, some of these streaks are kind of bright, so maybe they would be bright enough for really good binoculars, but certainly not anything by eye. And as Orion heads out post TLI, it's going to be too dim to see by anything but a telescope. But if you have a good telescope that can perform go-tos to get you right on the exact coordinates, you would be able to see Orion throughout the mission from Australia quite nicely. So again, for those of you just joining us, we are currently looking at what I believe to be the ICPS upper stage, and we will go back to watching the Orion streak through the view here in a minute. We've got a little less than an hour before twilight, astronomical twilight begins this morning, and we'll be going until we hit twilight. Greetings from Tokyo. Welcome. Thanks for joining. So as soon as ICPS here leaves the field of view, we'll do a slew back to where Orion should have been based on its expected trajectory. Would smart telescopes be able to pick this up? Yeah, I think they would, especially this morning. These objects are bright enough that I think a smart scope should be able to see it without too much difficulty. This is using a rather massive 11-inch telescope with a 0.63 focal reducer, but that's probably a bit overkill this morning. You can see how bright the streak is relative to some of these stars. So I think even a small smart scope should be sufficient. Welcome, Spain. Thanks for joining. So probably just a couple more exposures here before it leaves the field of view. We are now 5 minutes past the hour. So I'll go here, and maybe here. Okay. Okay, coordinates are going to be 1627, 57. Really 58, 1627, 58. 58. And negative 30, 45, 13. 45, 13. Okay. Alright, we're going to go ahead and go back to this, hopefully, Orion. Now, the scope's been putting targets at the very top edge of the view of this camera. I did the alignment with a crosshair eyepiece, and the center of that crosshair eyepiece is not necessarily quite the same as the camera itself. So I've got to move things down a little bit. So this next image will probably be a bit streaky too, because I just moved the scopes of the stars, hopefully are correctly positioned. Yep, there we go. Beautiful. Orion's almost dead center. So you can see it right here, almost right in the center of the field of view, right where we expect it to be. Which again, this is confirmation that that's telling us that's Orion. Orion spacecraft integrity. What website can I use for the coordinates so I can see it in Australia? That's a great question. I will post a link to JPL Horizons here. So if anyone wants, you can go get the information straight from JPL using their Horizons web system. You put in your location, you look for, you can do a search for target body, you can just search for Artemis and select Artemis 2. Put in your home coordinates, set the time, and then get the coordinates. So there you go. And of course, I'll be independently determining the orbit here from these images myself and confirming that that is Orion. Tyson Dog Original asks, my telescope is quite old and budget, looking to upgrade. I was looking at smart scopes. Are they worth the money? Well, I'm an old geezer at this point when it comes to amateur astronomy, and I like a manual telescope. I don't have a smart scope, but they are quite popular and probably for good reason. Um, I don't have any experience using one, to be fair, but I do like the more hands-on nature of the scopes that I have. But that's also partly because I film things like satellites and rocket launches and do all these things where I'm changing out what cameras attached to them, whether I want to use an eyepiece. Um, you don't have that level of flexibility with a smart scope. But uh, modern smart scopes now, I mean, they have very nice sensors on them that they can get good pictures for relatively little money in some cases. Uh, some of the more high-end, expensive ones, I think, are too much money for what you get. But some of the other ones, like the C-Star S50, S30, they can be, they can be quite compelling for some people. Depends on what you're looking to do, right? If you're wanting to take pictures of galaxies and nebulae, um, and you're not wanting to fiddle around with, polar alignment and manually focusing and, changing out hardware and stuff, then yeah, it can be a compelling use case for that. But if you're looking to get into uh, other aspects of the hobby, like satellite tracking or rocket launch viewing, um, I don't know that they're versatile enough for that, for my purposes. I also think there's benefit in learning how to star hop, but if you've already had a budget scope and you've already sort of lived in that world and used, paper sky charts to bounce around from star to star and do that kind of thing, then yeah, maybe it's time for something with more automation built in. Um, so I hope that that advice is helpful. Maybe I was too wishy-washy on it. I mean, but what I would want to buy personally for myself isn't necessarily what the average consumer these days wants. Uh, and smart scopes are quite handy. I mean, the setup time is minimal, the teardown time is also minimal, um, and you can get pretty decent pictures out of it, especially if you do some post processing yourself. Tyson Dog Original says, I do like the hands on thing, but trying to attach cameras and phones, etc., I think if it was easier, I'd use it more. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's your answer then. Uh, because with a smart scope you don't have to change out the equipment, so for some that is a significant advantage of it, really. um, and I've heard it said for years, the scope that's best is the scope that gets used the most. I don't I will say I don't know that that's always necessarily true. um, there's different tools for different jobs. um, but there is something that rings true in that if you have a scope that might be expensive, large, and really nice, but you never pull it out and use it, then how good is it really? What good is it doing you? A smart scope, because it has very low setup and teardown time and is very simple to use, um, it's probably something you might end up using a lot. Christopher Levesque says, I just asked ChatGPT to tell me how I can track Artemis 2, and it says it hasn't launched yet, and it's adamant about it. Yeah, this is the thing. Like, yeah, I get questions about AI a lot. I get questions about, whether it's going to replace us or not. And it'll do something like that. And then I just say to myself, well, it's not ready for prime time yet. It's not ready for any situation that doesn't have a human in the loop. So you still have to have a human in the loop to check its results, because that's obviously very wrong. I'm tracking it right now, right? Um, but yeah, you have to consider what the purpose of that tool is. And there's different types of AI, LLMs, large language models. They're, you know, They're built from predicting text, which means they can seem, sentient. They can seem like they're quite smart. But then they do something like that, and they'll seem to argue with you, and just, you know, they've swung the pendulum in that direction. It used to be that LLMs like ChatGPT were very much yes men, and they would just agree with you, even if you were dead wrong, because that was the reward function for them. And now they've tried to adjust that, but now in doing so, it can be very adamantly wrong, and you end up wasting your time with it just trying to talk to a brick wall and tell it that it's wrong. So yeah, I'll get off that soapbox, but I don't think it's ready for prime time just yet for placing people. But that doesn't mean that that won't happen, and problems will result. So once again, Orion is now leaving the field of view. It's right over here on the left side, about to exit the field of view. And what I believe is the ICPS is entering the field of view. So once again, what we'll do is the same thing as before. We'll sit here and wait for ICPS to streak through the field of view before we move the telescope once more. And hopefully this will give us enough data to solve for the orbit of both the Orion spacecraft and the ICPS. Jeff says, that's not true. ChatGPT gave me a list of ways to track Artemis. Well, that's good. I'm glad. And it can give different people asking it very different results. Like somebody mentioned replacing the number 2 with the Roman numeral 2. Maybe that works better. In fact, that was Jeff suggesting that. So, yeah, I mean, just looking at that situation, like to me, that's a lack of robustness that would be concerning if you didn't have a human in the loop checking the results, making sure it's reasonable. And so there we see a satellite, maybe a Starlink, something like that, streaking right through the whole field of view from top to bottom. That is what a Starlink would look like, streaking through the view, even in a 20-second exposure. So we can see these two objects that we're watching. These are definitely not low Earth orbit satellites like a Starlink. So Orion's left the view, and now we're going to continue following ICPS as it streaks through the view. All right, good night, Unfortuncated. See you later. Thank you. Oh, wow. Christopher Levesque says, I used ChatGPT to sequence Nina for my Messier marathon last week and got 109 targets in one night. So it's good for some stuff. It is. It is. But there's also these sort of, weird edge cases where it'll get something dead wrong. And I've seen it do this to me too, where it'll seemingly do very advanced operations in one moment, and then the next moment get something very basic, very wrong, and argue with you about it. And maybe that's, I know there's talk about like how long a chat goes on. It goes potentially more and more off the rails. You get outside of the window of its functionality, and it just goes off the rails. But that's not to say things won't change in the next 5 years, where even that doesn't happen anymore. Christopher Levesque says, from ChatGPT, all right, you were right, and I'll own that. Artemis 2 did launch yesterday, yeah. Yeah, current distance from Earth. So I've got distance here from my telescope, which isn't from, the surface of the Earth or the center of the Earth. It's just from where I'm at on the Earth. But we are 19 minutes past the hour. And it's this many AU, which is what? 2 kilometers. Yeah, 70,000 and 76.86 kilometers. And in miles, that is 43,543.7 miles. And that's going to be roughly close to its distance from surface of Earth, but you know, it's only 30 degrees above the horizon for me, so I'm not directly on the GP or the ground point directly below the spacecraft, of course. And a new member, Tori Hanzo, 3785. Welcome to Astronomers. Thank you. Appreciate it. It works awesome for diagnosing problems with cars. I use it every day for that. That's cool. Yeah. Do satellites often plague images this badly? Around twilight they do. Yeah, around twilight they'll pop up like that. It depends on time of year and all of that as well. As we get closer to summer and the sun is not as far below the horizon at night, or rides a little closer to the horizon, you end up with a longer period where satellites are visible. It depends on your location on Earth as well. Will there be a chance to catch Orion as it comes back for reentry? So that's a good question. It'll be splashing down in the Pacific. Oh, what's that? That's interesting. Why did the brightness suddenly change like that? Huh. I'm not sure what that's all about. Could be a cloud. Yeah, I think there's some cloud cover passing through. Yep. Little bit of wispy cloud cover passing through that's reflecting more moonlight there for a moment. Oh, no, that's a motorcycle in the background. So, yeah, sorry. To answer your question, Sawyer, about catching Orion as it comes back for reentry. Oh, we got some more cloud passing through. I'll definitely have an opportunity to potentially see it if the weather allows. I should be able to track it as it's coming back towards Earth after it rounds the moon. During reentry and splashdown in the Pacific, I'm not sure whether anyone on the coast of California would have an opportunity to see it, but definitely I won't here in Florida. I think I want to say Australia may have an opportunity to see it in the last few hours before reentry, so that would be kind of cool. Oh, how extensive is that cloud cover? Is it coming in? It's pretty. Yeah, it's kind of extensive, isn't it? Yeah, we might be toast here soon, unfortunately, due to the weather. Okay, I think that's the streak of ICPS just barely starting to emerge from the clouds there for a moment. But we got some clouds moving into the area now, so I might be done sooner than expected this morning, unfortunately. Oh, here it comes back out again. There's ICPS. And I might not wait for it to completely exit the field of view before I try to move to Orion one more time. I'm crazy for staying up this late? I got 2 hours of sleep. I'm good. Have I tracked reentry? I have. If you check my channel, there is a video, I think it was Cruise 6, of showing reentry that I caught from Florida. And a new member, Stevie B 1338. Welcome to Astronomer. Thank you. Appreciate it. Have I been up the whole night? No, not quite. I did get about 2 hours of sleep most of the night. Okay, so now we're back out of the clouds momentarily. I will try to slew to Orion one more time here before we lose it in the clouds again, potentially. We're looking at 25 minutes after the hour, so we'll go a few minutes ahead of that. And say it's going to be 16:30, 19. -30, 52. Oh, come on. 11. Go to target. Okay. Okay. I think it's going to be probably about here. No? Okay, it's down here. There we go. Okay, so there's the Orion spacecraft again. So integrity's down here, streaking towards the center of the field of view. Are those small black circles dirt on the sensor? That's correct. That's exactly what they are. So I'll be taking flat fields, hopefully, if the weather doesn't completely kill me. I'll hopefully be taking some flat fields for calibration, and that'll be taken out in the processed images for the time lapse later. Christopher Levesque says, from ChatGPT, if you want to take this all the way, say the word and I'll build you a custom Artemis 2 tracking file for Nina, estimate visibility geometry from Oregon, and give you a best shot attempt. I mean, that's pretty cool if it can do all that for you, I suppose. Stellarium shows its position. Here in Australia, it's been... Oh, wow, here comes more clouds. Here in Austria, it's been in the east under my horizon. What is my focal length and field of view, please? So my focal length natively is 2.8 meters, and I've got a 0.63 focal reducer on there right now. I'm not sure what the total FOV is until I do astrometry on it, but I'll be posting the results of my astrometry and processing later. It's probably less than half a degree field of view. I don't typically use this scope for deep space work like this, mainly because I don't have a wedge for it, so I can't polar align this scope. So yeah, even after tonight, though, we'll have additional viewing opportunities of Artemis 2, which is So cool, and I'm really looking forward to continuing to follow this mission as it heads out to the moon and back. Um, so stay tuned, even after this stream. Please subscribe if you haven't already, because I will be doing more live streams. They're going to be early morning live streams like this. When we have visibility in Florida for this mission, it's going to be in the early morning hours, shortly before morning twilight, and that's what I'll be going for. Okay, seems like we're out of the clouds for now, so that's good. Knock on wood. Maybe we'll be able to follow this all the way to twilight. Not familiar with Arrow. They say DSM will absolutely lightly track Artemis 2. Not familiar with what Arrow is. I probably should know what that is, but yeah, you love my substitute arrow? Thanks. Very, very quick and dirty, but effective way of pointing at things. Which camera am I using? I'm using an S-Big ST2000 XCM, binning 2x2 here for sensitivity. Thank you, Bodie McBroadface. Appreciate it. Yeah, this mission will make a record for furthest humans from Earth, if all goes well. SMA Sky says, supposed to get rain today, especially in the afternoon. Was thinking of streaming the moon tonight, but that probably won't happen. Maybe tomorrow. Did Red make it to the launch? Yes, he did. He was filming from Titusville while I was filming from the Ital Causeway. Global shutter? I mean, I guess it is, yeah. It's a mechanical shutter. It's a old school CCD. I mean, at this point, there are much better cameras out there, astronomical cameras especially, but this still works for me, and I have nostalgia for it. This was, this was a high-end, really cool camera when I was in college, and something I drooled over potentially one day owning. So for me, it's like retro gaming. I like shooting things on my old LX200 with my old S-Big cameras. Yeah, that's right, SMA Sky. We believe that's ICPS coming in on the right. Every time I've gone to the expected coordinates of Orion, that streak on the left has been right bang on where it ought to be. But then something else comes in a few minutes later, and I believe that is ICPS trailing Orion. We also saw something earlier in the stream that flared behind the ICPS, maybe one of the CubeSats. Somebody was saying one of the CubeSats has a large solar array, so it might have caught a sun glint and shined bright enough to see in the scope for a moment, which is really cool. Or it might have just been something else that came off the ICPS, I don't know. Can we call Red's Bane now after appearing with the mask? You'll have to ask him if he's okay with that, I don't know. Yeah, so what we've been doing and what we'll do again this time around, I think, is we'll let Orion leave the field of view and continue to let ICPS streak through the view behind it, which I think will be nice for the time lapse. Plus, it gives us more data on both objects to be able to solve for the orbit of both. You've been shooting film? Sweet, yeah. I was tempted to shoot some film of Orion tonight, but I just don't have time to do so. I mean, and I really don't want to sacrifice it when I've already got a camera running on it right now, this camera. I'd have to shut down the stream and throw the film camera on, focus the film camera, and hope I can get some exposures before twilight comes in, and then hope this film is sensitive enough to even pick up Orion, which is not a guarantee by any means. So, probably going to hold off on that idea. But now we're going to watch ICPS streak through here. But in general, yeah, I've been enjoying shooting film too, and hope to be doing some more of that soon. It's a very fun challenge for sure. And $9.99 from Mamacita. Spare change for some coffee tea as I need caffeine. Thanks for streaming. Appreciate it. Thank you. I will definitely get some coffee going here soon. Haven't got my film developed yet, but I'm hopeful. I used a DSLR Canon to get the focus and then swapped it with the Canon film camera because they both had the same back focus. That's a sweet way to do it if that works. Yeah. You gotta let me know, Christopher, if that ends up working for you. Unfortunately, I don't have a digital SLR with the same back focus as my film camera. Bodie McBoface still blows my mind with the denial going on. The number of claims of CGI is just so sad. Yeah, but hey, here we are tracking it after launch. I mean, I filmed the launch, I filmed it now in an elliptical orbit after launch, and hopefully they perform TLI successfully and I continue to follow it out to the moon and back. So there you go. NASA Aero. Huh, I'll have to look that up later. I'm not familiar with that particular program. I usually use JPL Horizons to get the data straight from NASA. I hear a jet overhead. Oh, yeah. See him headed out there. Even if they were inside the rocket, they would deny the moon missions. I mean, that's the funny thing. I do think there's a subset that, even if you put them inside integrity, even if they were hanging out there with Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, they would claim that it was all simulation. They're just in a simulator somewhere. That's not space out there. What was the name of that show? Was it called Avenue 5? Might be getting it slightly wrong. It had, um, oh gosh, Hugh Laurie was the lead on the show, and it was about a kind of a space yacht, space tourism yacht far in the future, and one of the people on it, they're stranded, and one of the passengers says that it's all just visual effects out there. That's not real. Space isn't real, and she knows because she works in VFX, which stands for visual effects. So she goes out the airlock and immediately dies. And then the other characters who believe her say, "That's just a visual effect. She's not really dead. I'm going to go out the airlock too." And they follow her out like lemmings. So yeah, I do think there unfortunately is a subset of space denial that would actually do exactly that. Like Eric the Viking, it's not sinking. I vaguely know what that is, Tyson Dog, but I don't think I've actually seen the skit. And a new member, Harold Human, 1733. Welcome to Astronomer. Thank you for joining. Welcome aboard. So the other thing I wanted to talk about tonight, before we get too close to the end here, is I believe we have an answer to what my UFO was. So, in my launch footage, I saw something really unusual I hadn't seen before, and I could not figure out what it was. But there was a suggestion from David Hash, and I think it's probably correct that, and let me pull it up here. Let me pull up the reply from David. Yeah. So let me see here. Share another window. Okay, see if I can pull this over to the side here a little bit. So yeah, David Hash says, I think there's a decent chance you're seeing light from the plume that's being refracted by all the interacting shock waves around the vehicle. You can see this on some SpaceX launches near Max Q. The SES-12 launch has a great example from T plus 130 to T plus 140. And he's got a link to it here and a screenshot of it there as well. So you can see a star-like object just off the nose of the Falcon 9. And if we go to it, I think you'll probably agree that this is a very likely
increase our velocity,
explanation.
Increases, but then we're going through less dense atmosphere, so pressure decreases. Everything after max Q means the scarce density.
So there, you see some shock waves. You see a star off the nose.
So we're going to come up on a few events.
We need that. Back it up a little bit here. One more time. So there's some horizontal or linear looking shock waves near the plume, but out by the nose, in fact, right over the body there was a flash, like something in front of the rocket for a moment. And then off the nose, there's like a star that comes at the rocket. But I don't think that's a star, and I think David Hash is right. That's light from the plume that's being refracted through shock waves coming off the nose of the vehicle and making a star-like object next to the vehicle. I had never seen that particular appearance before. I hadn't noticed that before. I had noticed the more horizontal or linear shock waves that you see closer to the plume before. I'd seen that in Red's footage. I'd seen that in other videos. You see it there, right there. But the star-like appearance of light being refracted through the shockwave, I hadn't noticed that before. So that's still pretty cool to me that I was able to capture that on this launch of Artemis 2. I don't know if anyone else noticed that or caught that. But yeah, pretty excited about that still. But I do think we have an explanation now for our UFO. But I will check and make sure it's not one of the NASA tracking planes. Somebody sent me the tracking data for that plane, so I can cross-reference that with my coordinates and verify whether it would have been in the field of view or not. But I'm now thinking we actually have our answer probably, and it's probably nothing like that. It's probably refracted light through a shock wave. Okay, so now we'll move back to Orion's current position. 49 minutes after the hour. Coming up on astronomical twilight in just a few minutes here. 1633. 13. That's really 14. Negative 30, 59, 31. Okay, I'm going to go back to Orion. So we have been tracking the ICPS there. Now we're going to go jump ahead and catch Orion one more time. All right. So there we go. There's the Artemis 2 spacecraft, the Orion capsule Integrity. Daltown FM asks, hello, did they bring the celestial theodolite on the Artemis 2 mission? No, I don't think they did. Christopher Levesque says, Venus, refracted light off swamp gas. Yeah. Yeah, shuttle had the linear spikes before, but they usually traveled up and down the boosters trail, as I recall. Yeah, I remember that too. That's why this was so unusual to me this time. I hadn't noticed, and I hadn't seen that before with the kind of a star-like appearance of refracted light coming off the plume further up the vehicle. I didn't recall seeing that before. Obviously, it has happened before, but I just hadn't noticed that before. Daryl Watts 1281 says, just found your page, so I've subscribed to it. Thank you. The objects that we were looking at were baskets that the astronauts ride down if they have to egress from the tower. Yeah, that's right. There were baskets. The emergency egress baskets started going down the escape wires at liftoff from the pad. That was in my footage as well, right at liftoff. Yeah, are they in the sleep period now, SMA Sky? I think you're right about that. I was hearing some call-outs to the spacecraft right when I woke up before I set up the telescope, but I think they probably are in their sleep period now. Christopher Levesque says, on Tim Dodd's footage, you saw a bunch of little bright objects falling down behind the rocket. And yeah, so that was also what was strange to me. Oh, there's another satellite streaking right through the field of view. Yeah, I would have expected anything falling off the rocket to be visible as something falling behind the rocket, but what I was seeing was, if anything, seeming to move up towards the rocket. It didn't look right, Uh, that was what was stumping me. I couldn't figure out what the heck it was. It just appeared out of nowhere. It appeared to move up towards the rocket, if anything, and it was moving with the rocket, and it was in two different cameras, two different telescopes, so it's not a reflection, it's not a lens flare. Yeah, it was so weird. But now it does make sense that it was probably refracted light passing through a shockwave coming off the vehicle. I have a burn to take care of, then more sleep. Yeah. When is that burn? Jeff, can you Can anyone find that out for me real quick? When is their next burn? Because, yeah, I probably should stay on Orion in case the burn happens at this point. But I'll probably not catch it. It'd be nice to be able to catch it. About 2 hours, if I recall correctly. Darn. Yeah, I won't be able to see it if that's the case. Okay. Yeah, 6 hours ago. You're right. It looks like after a 4-hour nap, the Artemis 2 crew will be awakened at 7 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time on Thursday, April 2nd to prepare for the perigee rays burn. Yeah, there's no way I'll be able to. Then they'll resume their sleep at 9:40. So unfortunately, it's going to be too light out. It's going to be daytime here by then. So I won't be able to see the perigee rays burn, unfortunately. I'm in Florida. Unless you were asking someone else. So I think I will just leave the field of view alone at this point and let ICPS streak through one more time to get as much data as I can on both objects to be able to solve for their orbits. Good night, Bodie McBoatface. Have a good one. And another bright satellite coming through here, streaking right through the field of view, right up to the upper left corner. That's cool. Yeah, as we get more and more into twilight here now, any satellite that passes through the field of view will basically have line of sight to the sun and will be quite visible. Gotta go before my wife finds me. Well, have a good one, Christopher Levesque. Thanks for joining us tonight. It's been fun. What's the time between frames? It's about 20 seconds for the exposure, and I don't know how many seconds for the download. Probably 5-10 seconds for the download from the camera. It's an old camera. It's USB 2.0, and it's downloading the raw data from the camera in, like I said, probably about 5-10 seconds. If it's even USB 2, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, it's not a terribly fast download. Though it does sound a little faster from binning it 2x2. It's not having to download as much data. Yeah, thank you. It's been fun. This has been great. Man, seeing that launch, historic and just gorgeous. Just like I said, not trying to toot my own horn, but the best launch footage I've ever captured, the most beautiful launch I've ever seen, from close up too. And now, getting up early here and filming the vehicle in deep space, far beyond low Earth orbit, and the upper stage trailing behind too. I just love it. Yeah, some ice guy. You had to know I was gonna be tracking it if at all possible. Yeah, the capsule is the one on the left. It's the streak on the left that's about to leave the field of view, and the ICPS upper stage is trailing behind it to the right. So you can see them both moving as each exposure comes in. So Ryan's here, ICPS is on the right over here. Another satellite streaking through the field of view. And now the ICPS. So we'll continue to wait for the upper stage here to pass through the field of view. Yeah, there's some distance between them, and keep in mind that they are both quite far from Earth at this point. I want to say about 40,000 miles in that neighborhood. Uh, so this kind of separation between them implies quite a large separation in real space. Some guy says, I hope I'll have a chance to at least attempt to capture if the weather holds out. Weather isn't looking great Friday morning. Yeah. just curious how I'm able to find the tracking. So NASA had published what the orbit should have been even before the launch. So I pulled that up on JPL Horizons and went to where we expected Orion to be, and sure enough, it was there. So I've just been following it since then, and I'll be able to independently determine the orbit myself from these images. By looking at how these objects are moving over time, I can actually solve for the orbit. Greetings from Mexico. Welcome. We're going to be wrapping up here pretty soon. We're into astronomical twilight. And see, we're going to be hitting nautical twilight in about 15 minutes. Probably won't be able to track it much past that point. So yeah, this is going to be a great mission. And I'm very glad to have had the opportunity to be here and provide this for you all, both in terms of the launch and now tracking the spacecraft in space. Let me see if I can make some parallax observations here using an eye telescope in Utah. That would be fun. It's pretty low there. Yeah. I should have known that was going to be an issue. What's the minimum elevation of this telescope? 15 degrees. 17 from 60 to 120. Okay, well that's not 60 to 120. Well, maybe we can eke it out. Okay, run started successfully. Alright, I fired up a telescope in Utah. And now I'm just gonna move the scope, hopefully. Oops, that's the wrong way. Other way. There's a possum or something over there rattling the fence. Okay. Yeah. Orion from Utah, it's just barely high enough for the scope over there to even potentially get it. Okay, I'm gonna slew there. It's gonna be 1635. 59. Negative 3104. 48. Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure which one that is there at the bottom right, so I'm gonna figure it out. Make sure that we're on Orion here at the start. Telescope in Utah is just slewing over there now, and gonna be starting pictures just momentarily. Yep, starting its first picture now. Perfect. And we've got Orion in the frame from Florida. So now I'll be able to get parallax measurements between Utah and Florida on Orion. The eye telescope might be able to see the burn too. Yeah, that's a good point. Except, yeah, it would have to be imaging about 40 minutes from now. It probably would be able to. Unfortunately, I'm running the images now to get the parallax measurements, so my time on that scope's going to be done by the time the burn happens. Is that worth the trade-off? I don't know. Maybe. But it is what it is. Are they headed towards the moon, or are they still in Earth orbit? Yeah, they're still in Earth orbit. It's an elliptical orbit. And they'll be hopefully doing the TLI burn later this evening, 24 hours after launch. Right now, they're checking out the spacecraft, making sure all the systems are good before they commit to going to the moon. And so I've got the arrow pointing at where they are in the picture now, moving from right to left in the frame in these 20-second exposures. What time will I be on this evening? I'm not sure. This evening I'll probably be driving home. I'm staying with my parents close to the Cape, but I'll probably be heading home this evening. So I might not be on this evening, maybe tomorrow morning, but we'll see. Depends on weather too, which might not be so good. So getting some nasty weather in Oklahoma. Yeah, stay safe out there. Thank you for the live. Yeah, my pleasure. Can I explain in simple terms what I'm doing? Yeah, I'm monitoring the position of the Orion spacecraft integrity using an 11-inch telescope and a CCD camera. It's a streak in each of these 20-second exposures because the telescope is tracking the motion of the stars and the spacecraft is moving relative to the background stars. So as it reaches the edge of the field of view here, I'll move the telescope and try to keep Orion in frame. At the same time I'm doing all this here in Florida, I'm also using a telescope remotely in Utah to take pictures of the spacecraft from a different perspective so that I can measure the parallax and measure the distance of the spacecraft. Hopefully that all works out. So as Orion leaves the field of view to the left here, the ICPS upper stage of the rocket that was disposed of is entering the field of view on the right, trailing behind the Orion spacecraft. I'm going to move the view a little bit, hopefully keep up with the spacecraft. Ah, I went the wrong way with it again. See if I can move it back the other way. Hopefully this works. Yeah. Okay, I'm just adjusting the scope some more. And then now we'll let it streak through again. Well, okay, I wasn't expecting it to continue to streak that much. Maybe some backlash in the drives. Yeah, okay. Yeah, there we go. Oh, the telescope in Utah is now doing a refocus, so it stopped imaging Orion and it's refocusing itself. That's fine. Oh, the technical bit with the software. So the software that you're seeing here is the CCD control software called CCD Soft. It's just controlling the camera exposure and all of that. Separately, I also have some mount slew controls here that let me move the telescope. So it's pretty simple. I'm just manually moving the telescope right now to keep Orion in the field of view based on how I see it moving from right to left in the image. I'm just correcting for that with the mount slew controls. Now the telescope's aligned using CPWI, and that's a program for controlling Celestron and plane wave telescopes, and it's been aligned on about 5 different stars, so it's got a very good pointing model for this area of the sky right now, and it's able to locate anything I tell it to go to based on the coordinates. I know the coordinates of where Orion should be in the sky, and that's right where we're finding it. And so what I'm doing now is collecting images over the time of this webcast to be able to go back and measure the exact coordinates of Orion using the stars in the image. That's a process called astrometry. And using those coordinates over multiple points in time will allow me to solve for the orbit of the spacecraft and verify that this really is the Orion spacecraft after launch, and that the object that has been trailing it should be the ICPS, or interim cryogenic propulsion stage, the upper stage of the SLS rocket. Simultaneously, while I'm doing all of this, I'm waiting on more images to come in from a telescope I'm remote controlling in Utah to be able to measure the parallax and distance of the Orion spacecraft directly by having 2 telescopes that are separated far apart across the nation. Yeah, I could potentially use, so a question from SMA Sky, do I think I would be able to track Orion directly and blur the stars? Yeah, I could use, I could use my minor planet tracking program. I'm even thinking I could potentially load it in as a rocket trajectory, even though it's not a rocket. Um, that's that's possible. So there's a couple different ways I could skin that cat to make that happen. Um, the 11-inch would definitely be the best for that. The LX200 does not like to move this slow. I mean, the size of that streak, even though it's only a 20-second exposure and it's moving relatively decently, that's still a bit too slow for the LX200 to be in a happy place. It'll be too jittery at that speed. The 11-inch would be happy at that speed, I think. So potentially, yeah, I could. Don't have time for it, of course, this morning, but later I could potentially do that with the 11-inch. It's not a bad idea, really. What's my field of view here? And you're in Utah, funny enough. No. My field of view, I'm not quite sure. I'll have to measure that with astrometry. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not 100%. It's probably a little less than half a degree. Will I be able to track it even when it's close to the moon? As it gets closer and closer to the moon, it's going to get more and more difficult because of the moonlight. It's black and white because I'm binning the images 2 by 2, so the pixels are being grouped together in groups of 2 to increase the sensitivity of the camera. If you think about it in terms of how quickly the spacecraft is moving in 20 seconds going from one pixel to the next, you increase the sensitivity by reducing the resolution and sacrificing the color data and binning the pixels 2 by 2 so that in a bucket that's now twice as wide, the photons keep hitting that bucket for a little bit longer and filling it up a little bit higher so that you have a bigger signal from the spacecraft in terms of the image intensity. So yeah, I'm sacrificing resolution and color data to increase the sensitivity of the camera to make sure I can see as many stars as possible and see the Orion spacecraft as clear as possible for doing astrometry and measurement of its orbit. Enjoying podcasts with my dogs. Million thank yous for explaining to those who are new to this topic. This is so cool. Question: what is my favorite star or planet or constellation? Well, let's see here. Favorite star is probably going to be. I mean, I guess I have to go with, in terms of utilitarian, Polaris, North Star, alignment target. But personally, I love Arcturus because Arcturus has a high degree of proper motion. It's in the constellation Boötes, and it moves year to year enough that you can see that, like Barnard's star, but it's bright enough you can see it by naked eye. And I've had some fun doing a video on the proper motion of Barnard's star. Planet, Saturn. Gotta go with Saturn. Can't beat the rings of Saturn. My favorite planet. And constellation, I mean, it's, I suppose, cliche, but Orion. There's just so many interesting deep space targets in Orion. Orion Nebula, Horsehead Nebula, Flame. There's so much good stuff there. Can I describe the power of my telescope in dumb terms? Well, the telescope's native focal length is 2.8 meters. So imagine a lens, a regular camera lens that's 2.8 meters long and 11 inches wide. It'd be absolutely massive. Because it's a catadioptric, it's able to fold that light, so it's bouncing the light back and forth inside of itself so that it's more compact and it's not actually 2.8 meters long. But the effective focal length, the length that the light is traveling inside the tube, comes out to 2.8 meters, which gives you a significant amount of magnification, essentially, and you're punched in really, really close on these targets. And that's why the main telescope footage of the launch yesterday evening, in the main telescope, you couldn't even fit the whole rocket. And that was with a focal reducer that is supposed to reduce the apparent magnification by a factor of about 0.63. So multiplying 2.8 times 0.63, that gives you the effective focal length. And even that was still zoomed in enough that at a distance of 7.7 miles, the Orion spacecraft, well, the SLS rocket, couldn't even fully fit in the field of view. So now we've got Orion leaving the field of view here and the ICPS coming in. You can see how much brighter the sky is in the whole image. Like, that's just from twilight as we're getting lighter and lighter now. Yeah, the telescope in Utah looks like it's resumed taking pictures, so hopefully I'll have some useful parallax data. I only approximated the telescope's coordinates in Utah, so hopefully the coordinates I put into that scope are accurate enough. I guess we'll find out. But there's ICPS on the right, and there's Orion on the left. Okay, I'm going to try to recenter Orion here a bit. Can I see a black hole? No, it's not a dumb question. I can't see a black hole directly, but I have seen a jet coming out of a black hole. So when material gets really close to the black hole, it can get ejected along the polar axis of the black hole, and I believe it's M87 has a visible jet coming out of it, out of its central black hole, and I've been able to image that with one of my telescopes. Okay, I need to move the scope some more. Yeah, M87. Yeah, that's a fun target. Challenging, but with the adaptive optics, I was able to get it even with my 8-inch scope. Thanks, Eric Briggs. Good to see you in the chat. Okay, now we're back on track. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to continue seeing it against the growing twilight, but there is the Orion spacecraft integrity. Streaking through the field of view one more time. Obsidian Studio says, I have an idea. You measure the angle by which you are tilting your telescope, then you measure the distance the craft travels, and use your frame speed to calculate the speed of the craft. Yeah, it's kind of like that. The telescope's encoders, although they are fairly accurate, it's more accurate to use the stars around the object to directly measure its coordinates. But essentially it is the same thing. You're looking at the coordinates of the object and how they change over time to measure its orbit and its trajectory. So all these pictures I'm taking, they're being saved in a raw format called the FITS format, which is a standard format for astronomy, and it's got metadata embedded on the exact time each picture was taken, the exposure length, all of that information. So I'll be able to work all that out after the fact. Do I have a way to calculate its speed? Absolutely. So yeah, by measuring its position and how that changes over time, we can work out what the orbit is, especially now that I have images coming in, hopefully from a second telescope in Utah. I can directly measure its distance with parallax, and then from that we know the velocity as well, based on how quickly it's moving from frame to frame. But we are losing it now in the morning twilight as it's getting brighter and brighter out here. You can see that streak is getting dimmer and dimmer against the growing background light. Yeah, that's right. As Tyson Dog Original says, myself and Red's Rhetoric also measured the speed of the International Space Station using that method with telescopes that were really only about 1 kilometer apart. Because ISS is so much closer, you don't have to have such a large baseline. Oh. Did it cancel me? Just got a receipt for my telescope usage in Utah, which was free, by the way. Oh, I guess it did cancel me. Did they close the roof? What's the deal, guys? No, they didn't close the roof, but maybe I used my maximum allotment of time. Or something. Didn't think it was done with the images yet, but that's fine. I got plenty of images. Hopefully usable ones. Let's see. Yeah, there's a streak there. Alright, we're in business. Let me see. What's the easiest way to do this? Let's pull up the email. They emailed me JPEGs of the images, but of course I'll have the FITS files from the Utah telescope as well to go through and process. That telescope has a color camera, and you can't bin it, so you just have that to work with. Yeah. I'm not sure which one's ICPS and which one is Orion in the Utah telescope yet, but I will bring up, if I can. Oh, wow. Yeah, we're losing the image altogether. That's weird. Okay. Not sure what that's about. That doesn't look good in terms of the camera. But before I go, I will show real quick the image from Utah. Oh, it doesn't want to display. Okay, that's funny. Alright, I'll just bring up the image directly. 1 second. yeah, so this is the telescope image from the Utah telescope. And you can see two streaks here. Let me pull up my cursor. So there's one bright streak here and one slightly fainter streak here. I'm not sure which one is which yet, but I'll be analyzing these images as well for both the parallax and determining what what the orbits of these objects are. So pretty cool stuff there. And with that, that's going to do it for today's webcast. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching and sticking around to the end. I appreciate it. And until next time, clear skies.